Honestly Unbalanced.
If people often say, my yoga practice began when I had my first child, etc. It's a little bit of a cliche, but I'd love to know how having children has affected your spiritual practice, and not just the practice, but what things mean to you. And on a bigger question, like how you live your life now, has that changed as a dad?
Yeah, that's a massive question. Yes, I'm stoked to be back. Thank you so much for having me back. Great honor to be guest number 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it was. But yeah, back at number 80 means I'm doing something good. Yeah, having kids, it's a life school. Having kids is a sacrifice of love that I never planned on, never thought of, but definitely needed. And I think that having kids is has definitely impacted my spiritual practice, in that I'm not able to read endlessly the literatures that I used to. I'm not able to chant without looking at my watch every 10 seconds or hearing a screaming kid in the background. But what it has done, it's helped me to value the time that I do get to do those things. And I guess what it has also done is make me realize the importance of what my parents did for me. When I see my parents now, I'm like, I genuinely, when I say hello, I love you, thank you so much for everything you did for me, I actually mean it 10 times more than when I first was writing Mother's Day cards. So yeah. In a nutshell, it's a life school of sacrifice, a life school of love, and it's definitely impacted. But I wouldn't change anything about that. I wouldn't say I don't want kids because it's negatively impacted. No, it's just taught me to value the time that I do get to practice.
And has it changed what you want, I guess, commercially? In that maybe before you just wanted a certain type of success. Is that type of success you are looking for change?
Yeah, that's funny, because I never thought I'd want more money because of kids. I thought, no, they'll adapt to my simple way of living. But, that's definitely not the case. Like, I want the best for my children. I think it's an instinctual thing. Maybe it's just that's my opinion, but I definitely feel like I want to up my game so that I can afford to send my child on ski trip holidays when that time comes, and cricket tours when that time comes, if he wants to do that or she wants to do that. So yeah, it definitely has do you mean like that, right? Commercially?
Yeah.
I definitely feel that I want to be able to provide.
It's quite an interesting conversation, money and spirituality, because I think there is a notion that you can't be spiritual and have lots of money. Is that an inner battle that you've kind of had to face?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Today, literally about half an hour before jumping on here, I was reading in a scripture called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I know most of the listeners won't know what that is. It's like a postgraduate study of Bhakti Yoga, and in the purport of that verse that I read today, it said this line, and this is going to be really, really interesting. It says, "An easygoing life and the attainment of transcendental realization cannot go together. By having comfort and hoping that one will attain transcendental realization, it's not possible." And I found that really striking, because I'm always thinking about how to strike the balance. But the reality is, by having more things and by relying on that comfort of those things, I'm not going to attain more transcendental realization. And that's a real conflict, for anyone that's working in wellness. How do I sustain myself at the same time as remaining a spiritually grounded person? And I think the answer for me is that I have to remain detached from the fruits of my action. And again, I know that sounds super complex and esoteric, so I'm going to try and unpack it. It's not that I am striving to make money in and of itself, but if I make that money and I can use the majority part of it back in the service of others, and at the same time, I'm conscious about how I spend. So say, for example, I earn £100 from, I don't know, doing a festival. I know it's not really £100, but hypothetically, let me split that in such a way that is conscious. So for example, what I do right now is I have a friend that actually helps me with my accounting. So that way it's not a family member that can help me just slide something under the door. But she comes in every Friday and we go through the accounts of what came in, what went out. And it makes me feel accountable that whatever has come in, a little portion of it goes back in to my project. a portion of it I get to use for travel and whatnot, and a portion of it I get to use for my family. And in that way, when I divide it, it's really consciously done, so I don't feel that I'm over striving. You know, I don't feel like, oh yeah, if I make 2,000 now, then I get a little bit more. I tend not to get into that headspace. I'm trying to always consciously, okay, this percentage will always go back into a higher purpose, or this percentage will be for my family. So I don't think of it like, you know, like I get too attached. And the funny thing is, even when I'm speaking, I'm thinking people won't believe that. People will think, oh, but you're just going to get more attached to that small percentage that is yours. And that's true. But at least I'm trying to be more conscious about it. And I think that that's the best that we can do, you know.
And I think the text you just described, we have to think the people that wrote these original spiritual teachings, they were supported by something. They were supported financially, and
by
they
community,
had home, they had food, by community, etc. And that doesn't really exist now. In that sense, we have to support ourselves in some sense. We have to continue to go on trainings to spread the word, as it were. We need expensive cameras. We need to buy equipment, and of course, we can make money through that as well. But the nature of our job as educators, whatever that might be, has fundamentally changed. Whereas in the past, it was either you were supported by community, or you lived. There was. Have you heard of Diogenes the Cynic?
No.
So he was kind of Roman era, to some degree, Hellenistic philosopher, but he was of that time. And he was purely like, I don't need any possessions. He was of that. And he was a very wise man, but didn't need anything. And then an emperor came to him seeking his wisdom, as the story goes, and said, he was in the corner with his lamp. That's all he had, was a lamp. And I can grant you anything you want. I want to hear your teachings. He said, you can grant me one thing, like, get out of my light. And that was his answer to the emperor. So that is very extreme end. But we have no support, really.
I think it's also like, you know, honestly speaking, I think it's also culturally, like, I think we've just been brought up in a culture where more equals better. And I just came back from a 4-day trip in India, and just to live so simply. Like, I lived really simply there. I ate only like once, maybe twice a day, and not out of choice, but just because there was so much going on. And I came back thinking, simple living, high thinking. I think that we can simplify life a lot more if we're just conscious about it. If we're just aware about the things that are superfluous to life. I think that if we just sat down and made a list of 5 things that we could do without in our lives, I think we'd live a lot happier. And I think sometimes we do overcomplicate it by thinking, you know, what is the conscious way to live? And sometimes the right thing to do is to detach. And I think that's okay. You know, traditional spirituality does talk about detachment quite a lot of the time. And I think we don't consciously even think about detachment. We don't think like, okay, what are the 10 things in my life that I really don't need right now, that don't serve my purpose, that don't serve my enlightenment, that don't serve my upliftment, that don't serve the people around me, that don't serve my you know, endeavor to find love in this lifetime. What are those 5 things? And if we just did that like regularly, like even once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months, a spring clean of our lives, then I think that we'd live a lot happier. But I think we overcomplicate it by thinking, what next thing do I need to strive to achieve, to receive, so that I can be happier? And I think that notion of more equals better has really entangled us. So I get the balance, but I think also we should think about detachment in a way which is positive.
How would you instill that values, I guess, to children? Because in India, I guess you were not with family, perhaps.
No, I was on my own. Yeah,
you were on your own. It was kind of it wasn't almost real life to an extent. And you weren't comparing yourself to anyone while you were there. Whereas bringing up your children, they will be, as they get older, comparing their lives to the lives of others. So to your children, or to anyone new to some spiritual inquiry, who's surrounded, like, let's say in a city like London, by people with things and by friends that are striving toward things, what would you encourage them to explore to find that detachment?
Well, a friend of mine, Kat Meffin, she said something really powerful recently to me. She said that you get to choose so much of the environment in which you place yourself in, the people you surround yourself with, the messages that you receive, the way in which you respond to people. And I think that sometimes we feel that we're trapped to conform, that, my children are going to struggle to find ways in which they can live simply and think higher, simple living, high thinking. So how am I going to instill that in my children? I think the simplest thing is I have to choose what they're exposed to within a certain framework. For example, I can choose where I get to hang out myself. You know, I get invited to come to late night networking events, well, quote unquote wellness events where there's drinks and late night food. And I choose not to go there because I just don't think that serves me or my family. I don't think it serves my consciousness. I don't think it serves my family. And in the same way, Saturday and Sunday, I try to spend as much time with them going on walks. That's a choice. Or going to the temple. You know, even though my son doesn't know anything about the chanting, at least he claps his hands in the chant. And, you know, that for me is everything, because at least even if I'm not pushing it on him, that's not the point. I'm exposing him. I'm choosing to expose him to certain frequencies of thought, certain levels of consciousness that eventually I think will really help him, even if he chooses not to go down that path. So I've made a choice to, to choose my sangha, to choose my association, to choose where I place and position myself.
Was there a point in your life where you decided to walk this path, you know, a sort of turning point, or was it just a natural kind of process of you embodying what you do and your chanting, and it just sort of naturally happened?
I think with most of these kinds of questions, it's usually both there was a moment, and both it's a progression. Like I don't feel like I fully turned, you know. I feel like there's still so many things that I'm attached to that do not serve that spiritual purpose. But the moment for me was hearing my spiritual teacher chanting, and I'm sitting at the back of the room, you know, miming along to the chant. And by the end of it, there's an infamous picture of me in a yellow t-shirt, which I still have not publicly submitted. But the t-shirt is like high above my belly. And I'm hands raised, calling out these beautiful names and just thinking, yeah, this is it. You know, I found that which my heart has been yearning for. And so, that moment I'll always hold sacred in my heart. But at the same time, I think sometimes we think so absolutely about our spiritual journeys that it has to be an epiphany, that the clouds have to part, that the sun rays have to hit my forehead, and then I feel somehow uplifted. But I think a lot of the time it's incremental changes. I think sometimes we think so much about perfection in spirituality that we forget that progress is to be celebrated just as much. And that every step in a direction towards a higher consciousness is also a turning moment. You know, today I chose, for example, I watched an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine while I was eating breakfast.
Oh my God, we love that show.
Yeah, I know. It's the best. I've watched it like twice over. And so I chose, like, after I ate half my cereal, I thought, you know what, let me just change it up and let me watch something that's spiritual. So I watched one of my gurus talking about spirituality. And I just went into the shower singing. Like, it was just way better that way. And it was a choice. And I think turning moments like that can be progression moments towards perfection that are just as successful, you know? So there was that guru moment where hands raised in the air. But what I'm trying to say is that, it can be every day, you know? Like right now, I'm encouraging you listeners, like, find a moment today where you can turn towards a higher loving connection. And that's just as successful as having a full-blown euphoric moment of joy in you know, whatever that is for you.
Why do you think sometimes people choose not to take the higher path? You know, in everyday choices, if you think every choice that I make can lead me towards something higher. So what is the reason for people not choosing that sometimes or often?
Yeah, so many things. Well, I can only speak from that which I know, or that has been taught to me. And it's understood that we're under the influence of three things in the material world. It's Adi Atmic, Adi Bautik, Adi Devik. That's the Sanskrit words. They literally translate as influences that are worldly, so like, you know, natural disasters, influences that are of the own mind, and influences of other people. And a lot of the time, us not choosing a higher connection has to do with these three things. Like, you know, someone says something to you and it just throws you off the whole rest of the day. Or your own mind, you know, like you're just super anxious about something and therefore you just feel like it's not the right headspace into entering a loving connection. Or, you know, the weather's just not good, you know, you're just not feeling up to it that day. So there are so many influences, and I can understand that. But the thing is that that's why I think it holds so much importance to having a daily practice. You know, I think that the discipline of getting onto a mat, the discipline of holding on to your chanting practice, the discipline of See, the thing is, when I say discipline, people always flinch a little bit because it's uncomfortable. The pain of discipline is uncomfortable, but the pain difference of regret, the pain of regret is unbearable. So the pain of discipline, of standing on your mat every morning might be uncomfortable, but the pain of regret of not having done that and then feeling at the end of your life like, oh crap, I missed an opportunity for a higher connection, that's unbearable. And so, yeah, it may be tough. There may be so many other things going on in life that are affecting you, Adhyatmic, Adhibautic, Adhidevic, but just remain steady in having a sacred time for yourself, even if you have kids, just wake up 10 minutes earlier or go to sleep 10 minutes later and just perform that sadhana, keep to that practice, even if it feels uncomfortable.
I think discipline there is a really important word. I think people often, instead of that, talk about motivation, and they're not the same thing. I think motivation comes and goes. You watch a cool film, you're motivated. You see someone in the gym, you're motivated, but that quickly passes. Discipline is something, the thing you do regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether you had a good or bad day. I think discipline is what affects change in yourself and what affects change in the world. Motivation
100%.
doesn't really.
Yeah, I mean, even in the hustle culture, I mean, mind the pun, even in the culture of grafting and really trying to be someone in this world, it's not easy. There's a sacrifice either way. Like in that verse I was reading today about the uncomfortable life and attainment, transcendental realization, it further goes on to say, by the way, it's so interesting how this stuff comes out, right? Like maybe it's just on my mind. But it says later on in that verse that penance is whether you're a materialist or a spiritualist. If you want to make money, it's not easy. If you want to be a successful materialistic person, that takes a lot of craft. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of sacrifice. And at the same time, if you want to be a spiritualist, it's not easy either. You still have to put in the time. You have to put in the discipline. Even when you're not motivated by money, you may be motivated by something else. Fine. Even if you're, even a materialist has a bad day, but still the discipline in their approach to waking up on time. Whereas I think sometimes in the woo-woo of being a spiritualist, quote unquote, we can sometimes then just go, oh, it's fine. It'll just come when it comes. And I think that's a load of horse crap. I just don't think that that's true.
There's a quote that I always come back to, which I love. I think it's Les Brown. He says, do the easy thing and life will be hard, or do the hard thing and life will be easy. And that's always stuck with me. I guess that's sort of discipline.
Spot on. No?
Oh, I have something.
Has it gone?
Wonderful. I
was thinking we should probably talk about what Radhika actually does, because we haven't even really touched on, and the listeners probably thinking, so what's this all about?
Actually, it came back to me.
It came.
We will talk about that. So what I thought there was, you often hear people say, and I've heard it, and I used to believe in it a little bit, that today running with my yoga, or my yoga today was looking after my children. My yoga was insert activity. Washing the car was my yoga today. And I'm increasingly not an advocate of that. I'm a firm believer you need a formal practice, even if it's a short 5-minute meditation. But I think through a formal practice, you then interact with the world and those activities in a way that is embodied as someone that practices yoga or has a spiritual practice, but they aren't your practice in themselves. I just wondered what your view, I'm not saying that my view is right, but what are your views on that idea?
See, I think that there's a tragedy in the word yoga, because let's take the word yoga. Yog means to bind, to connect with something higher. And the tragedy that I find is that religion, the etymology of the word religion, religio, means to bind, to connect to God. And what we've done essentially is thrown the baby out with the bathwater. That yes, we don't like the ritualistic rules or the discrimination that's there in religion, and therefore we've effectively thrown out the baby with the dirty bathwater. And in yoga, I think we're getting to a stage, eventually it's going to be more prevalent, where the same thing's going to happen. We're already seeing like cultural appropriation in yoga. We're already seeing people, dissing yoga because it looks, it's too commercial and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And so slowly people are starting to strip away the layers and go back to the root of what's the baby, and that is the connection. And I think that it's in yoga in running and yoga in all your lifestyle. And I totally agree with it. And I'm fully an advocate of it being both yoga on the mat and yoga off the mat. But I think that also there has to be a point at which you set a time, which is the actual practice, which is prescribed by the tradition, which is time on the mat, time with your mala, time with the chants, time with the scripture, time with self-discovery. And it's not that all of those things have to happen every day, but at least like at some point in the week, if you can just pencil in that time. And it sounds like, this is the point I made earlier, that it sounds lofty. What I'm speaking about, people might be thinking in their mind, Radhika, if life was so easy, like I've got so many other commitments and so many other responsibilities. But what I'm trying to say is, don't beat yourself up if you don't do it, but at least hold it in high regard that progress on the path is better than perfection. If your life isn't perfect and you're not living to a perfect schedule, no problem. But at least if you could just carve out right now, okay, say after this podcast, you've listened to this podcast, then 5 minutes after, what I want you to do is just pick up the Bhagavad Gita and just read one verse, or set yourself a disciplined note in your calendar that says, today for 20 minutes, I'm going to get on the mat. Like, do it today. Don't wait for tomorrow, because that progress, you'll always thank yourself for it. The endorphins that come out of just living to a promise that you've committed to yourself, that's still wonderful. So yes, yoga in connection in the world, off the mat, I totally think it's possible, but only if you do find the time to also root yourself on the mat.
I think there's some importance though in actually kind of falling off the mat and coming away from it, which is kind of where I'm at the moment. So I'm a new mom, and maybe it's an excuse, but also I feel like, we do kind of just go into survival mode, and the baby's kind of a practice in itself. But I find that sometimes having that time to fall off the bandwagon, as it were, is actually quite it kind of makes you realize, I suppose, that you've fallen off, in order to make you come back again and think about what you've actually lost in order to come back to balance. And someone on my sound healing diploma, a teacher, said it would be really boring if we were always in balance and harmony and euphoric all of the time, and life is just this game of kind of falling off and coming back again and finding new tools to kind of tweak and come back. And so I think there is some importance in coming away from it for a bit. I wonder
that's a really good disclaimer. That's because my wife has now got 2 kids, and I'm watching her right now. Like, I'm looking out a window and looking at her, looking after my baby girl.
And it's a brand new baby, isn't it?
And that time is required. And my spiritual teacher, he was really pragmatic about it. He just said, don't worry about the sadhana, like it's okay. But I think that what commends me to her is that she still found like 1 minute to read. Like, she's got a calendar which has got a verse on it, and every day when she flicks the calendar, she just reads that one verse.
I love that.
So you find what you can do. What is it for you that gives you just that one moment of connection during the day? That's why I was saying, like, chanting, it could just be one Ram or Om or whatever it is.
Intentional,
yeah, just like a small moment of that.
But I think you say there, the calendar she has, it's making it easy for yourself in some way.
Making it easy.
As a yoga practitioner, let there be least resistance. So if you're a yoga practitioner and you have the space, leave a mat out at all times. If you meditate, have your meditation cushion somewhere visible. If you can't, in the Bhagavad Gita, put it on your coffee table.
Exactly.
and have things nearby, or have it, actually even better, this is from Atomic Habits, the book by Radhika, like habit stacking. Like, have the Bhagavad Gita or whatever by your kettle. As in, so that when you're waiting for your morning coffee, you read that verse.
I'll be totally hands up honest. This is Honestly Unbalanced, right? A lot of the time, I'm not in balance. I don't wake up early all day, every single day of the week. I find it difficult to complete my chanting every single day. And there's days where I even struggle with my reading. So what I've started doing is, I placed, exactly like you said, I placed my Kindle in a place where every single day I have to pass it. So then I'll just click it, even if it's not at the same exact time every single day. I just click it and just open it.
It's not your toilet, is it?
No, it's not. I promise it's not my toilet. that's my time of scrolling reels. I'm just like.
Oh, thank you for your honesty.
That's a very man thing, isn't it? I think all men go to the toilet. It's like their sanctuary. Like,
are you one of those guys, by the way? Are you one of those guys that sends all your friends the funny reels?
Well, actually, mainly Holly, actually.
Oh, really?
No, hang on. Just to clear this up, Adam sends me the reels. I
I'm going to start sending you both reels now.
No,
anything I find
please
hilarious.
don't.
You're going to judge me. You're going to be like, this guy's not spiritual anymore.
You can send cat things my way. I find
Cat.
anything cat. I
Okay.
find hilarious.
I'll remember that.
We've talked about perfection a little bit. There's one quote that Anaïs Nin, and I read it, I think, when I was 18 for the first time, and it really stuck with me. And I had it written like literally on my laptop. That laptop broke a little while afterwards because I'm a bit of an idiot. I covered it in Tipex and then drew on it, thinking it would look cool, not understanding kind of heat transfer. Like, oh damn, this is years ago. But the quote was, perfection is static and I am in full progress. Perfection is static and I am in full progress. Yeah. And that really stuck with me. The idea that, you know, number one, perfection is this imaginary place that doesn't really exist, and it's imaginary state that doesn't really exist. Yeah. And if we were to ever get to this place, we would probably feel quite stagnant, and life would actually lose meaning to some degree.
Yeah, there's a thought that came out just now while you were speaking. Is there's another wonderful principle in one of the Bhakti texts that talks about how we should learn to be authentically crooked.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. I love that.
Yeah, that rather than trying to always be perceived as perfect, because you know what happens, you know, if we pretend to be perfect all the time and someone calls us out, then it hurts us more, because the false ego, the false us, the non-real part of us, the non-soul part of us gets hurt, because we feel that, oh my God, they're calling me out. Let me show them, you know. I know I actually am perfect. But rather, if we just live authentically crooked and just be like, yeah, you know what? I've not realized God. I may have had some beautiful divine moments, but I've not realized the ultimate truth in full totality. That's okay. You know, then it hurts us way less. When someone criticizes us, then it doesn't hurt us as much. So if you're someone that, you know, feels hurt when someone criticizes you, then one of the things that's suggested is live more authentically crooked. Yeah, it's fine. I'm not perfect. You know, my beard line's not always perfect. All good.
Can I read something? Someone just on terms of, because we've had that conversation separately, didn't we, about social media? Yeah. And, you know, people being nasty to you on social media. Yeah. And, you know, my view is actually just immediately block them and delete them. I don't interact with them. It's a waste of time. They're clearly kind of quite sad. Yeah. Someone I put a video on the other day, and someone wrote, I screenshot it because I found it quite amusing. Emoji laughing face. Enjoyed a few too many burger emoji lately, Adam.
Isn't that so rude?
And like an unknown account. Yeah. And so obviously part of me thought, I feel really bad for them. Like the fact that they've created the account.
Shocking.
They're quite upset by it. Like they must be really sad. And actually I would hopefully love to meet them and help them through that. Yeah. But also,
or punch them in the face.
But also, I acknowledge the fact that I really didn't care. I found it quite funny. Yeah. And I think, but that is a beauty, I think, of, as you say, not living behind a mask and just being true to yourself and being increased. I said this in the podcast with you, to be able to see things as they are. And when you talk about seeing things as they are, that's not the external world around you, but seeing yourself for what you are. Yeah. So an observation would be there, you know, for me. Oh yeah, I've got more percentage body fat than normal. That's fine. So I'm really happy. You know?
It comes from self-esteem, I think, having a strong sense of self, doesn't it? And knowing.
Yeah.
And on that topic of self-esteem, again, we're slightly related. We went to a Montessori school recently for Sunny. We looked into that, and they talked about self-esteem. And I'd heard someone else say, like a parenting guru, the best way for you to help your child deal with the future with social media and with all of this stuff that they can be exposed to without you really knowing, the best way for a child to navigate that is to instill early in them some sense of self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you've got any thoughts on that, on how to build self-esteem without building ego.
Yeah, we definitely live in a world of many devices of mass distraction. And we live in a world where a lot of our validation comes from likes and comments and numbers on, and let's just face it, a program. It's a digital program. So much of our validation comes from that which is in the hands of others. Like, you know, we place so much of our emotion in the remote control of the hands of others. And yeah, it's super scary, but I think that that's the reason why, is because like what we've done is, you know how they say don't put all your eggs in one basket. And this is just an opinion. Maybe we can I have not fully thought this through, so maybe we can churn it. But putting eggs in one basket, you can use that analogy even for validation. And sometimes we can place the validation that we desire in the basket, in one basket, which is that only if others feel that I am worthy, then I'm worthy. And I think that what we can do is, rather than just putting all of our eggs in one basket of the validation in the hands of others, let's try and find some time to understand that we are actually truly amazing individuals as well. Like, it's understood that every single individual is Sat Chid Ananda by nature. That means that the spirit soul that's seated within your heart, it has the quality of full of truth, full of knowledge, eternal. Sat, Chid, eternal, and full of bliss. So Sat means full of truth, Chid means eternal, and Ananda means full of bliss. You're truthful, you're eternal, and you're full of bliss. That's your nature. So how do we uncover that nature? So sometimes it's a case of, if we just take that as a theory, right? Look, okay, you're Satchidananda, you're full of truth, full of bliss, you're eternal. How am I going to uncover the layers of that to understand that that's who I truly am? And I think because we, in one sense, have lost our way with that, we don't know how to do that. So then we just assume that it has to be in the hands of others. And that's where I think that pain comes from. And that's where, like, if I'm honest, that's where I feel really deeply connected with Bhakti Yoga. Because yeah, it's fun chanting with others and it's fun traveling the world. But honestly, I think, like you've said before, Adam, it helps me to walk the middle path. You know, it helps me to feel that, yeah, I'm happy regardless of all the things out externally or even in my mind. It helps me to feel that, yeah, I am a blissful person deep down. Just unpack the layers.
And you come back to that true nature through chanting and through Bhakti Yoga. They're your ways of coming back to that place.
Yeah. Kirtan, I like to say it in one line for those that are new to Kirtan. Kirtan is a musical meditation that takes a minute to learn and makes you feel good just as fast.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you come up with that? I love that.
I think one of my friends, Janavi Harrison, she came up with it. She wrote it and I've just stolen it.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's stunning. So for someone who wanted to, because you're doing some Kirtan, you do Kirtans in London all the time. You go, are you doing a tour as well? Have I made it up?
Yeah. Well, basically every year I travel to loads of different countries, and my manager, his name's Rushabh, shout out Rushabh, he said, mate, why don't you just create a poster and put all the dates on there? I'm sure people would love to know where you're going and when you're going, because I usually just turn up and, you know, I haven't been very strategic about it. It's something I'm learning as the years roll by. And so that's what we did. So I'm going to Berlin, to New York, to Italy. If you want any of the information, it's all up on my website. But yeah, loads of different countries. LA, I'm going to Bhakti Fest in September. If you guys, anyone's hearing this is coming out there.
In fact, on that note, our next guest, well, I think next guest to be released is Govindas, who I think you know quite well.
He's a really good friend of mine. You're gonna love speaking to him.
We didn't know you guys knew each other. Actually,
yeah.
He mentioned you, and you're like, oh, you're really good friends.
Yeah. He's a deep guy. He's a soul brother. Let's call it like that. Birds of a feather.
No, he's a very cool guy. So, would you say that I know obviously America's like slightly further ahead with everything yoga in terms of, you know, the Bhakti Fest have gone on for years. Other countries in Europe, would you say kind of Bhakti Yoga and Kirtan are more popular or less? Like, I know Berlin seems to have a lot. Like Dave Stringer, who's a former guest, he's always in Berlin doing stuff.
Berlin's popping off.
That crowd?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever want to travel, there's a few countries that I highly recommend visiting. One of them is Berlin, because it's like, I mean, someone told me it's like the vegan capital of the world. And one thing I really noticed about Berliners, shout out to Berliners if you're listening, is that you're really conscious people. They're just really like, and maybe for a Londoner, it becomes a bit too much because they really overthink and really are conscious about every decision that they make. And this is a super stereotype, so I appreciate that. But they are very conscious people, and they are, they're just aware of their choices and what they engage with. And that's what makes Kirtan really, really easy to share there, because they're all about consciousness at the moment. That's the state of the kind of yoga world in Berlin.
were a bit resistant to Kirtan when you first came
Hell yeah.
across it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was super weird. Like, imagine, I mean, just like, let's be honest, you know, it's sitting in a room with a bunch of people chanting mantras that aren't in a native language like English for me. And you're seeing people dancing euphorically. And yeah, for a first time, I always say, I'm like, if you're freaked out, well, yeah, I'm sorry. Like it wasn't meant to freak, but I understand the experience of people getting freaked out when they first see Kirtan. They think, oh, is it a possessive state? Are they being possessed by a spirit? And that's not true at all. It's just, you know, it's strange because I unpacked it later, and I think the reason why I was freaked out is because I was so not ready to see people happy. You know, when we see people joyously dancing, chanting, and I mean, essentially singing, dancing, and smiling without drugging up and without drinking tons of bevies, then, you know, it's strange. Like, wow, what's wrong with them? Is there something in the aircon? Do they put some weed in the aircon or something? But yeah, I think now that I'm unpacked it years later, it's because sometimes we're so used to people being so moody all the time. You sit on a train, and if you smile at someone will automatically say, "What's your problem?" I'm just like, "There's nothing, no problem. I'm just a happy person," you know.
As a side note, that's a wonderful way to get someone not to sit next to you on a train.
Yeah, smile at
as
them
they walk past, smile, or like pat the seat and smile at them.
That's a little creepy, my friend.
Yeah,
you get that seat to yourself.
I'll try it.
It can really trigger people to see others in their light, can't it? And I think it's something that someone said to me in the last couple of years, which was lovely. Is because it reminds you of the power and the light that you have inside you.
Yeah.
And that can be a really scary thing, you know, to know that you have that in you, and to then have to change your life because you want it. You know, everyone wants really to be in that full power and light, but it requires a lot of discipline and change to sort of, I mean, I know momentarily with Kirtan you can get there, but I mean, to long term, it can be quite a scary thing.
And I think this is a good point, because I think sometimes we in the wellness world, we speak about overcoming the negative. And I think there is a point also where we have to speak about, when we're experiencing joy, how to express that maturely. Because say if we are experiencing whatever, spiritual joy, an inner connectedness, you're feeling happy in your life, forget spirituality, you're just feeling happy. You've got a great family situation, you've got a great home, you know, you're being sustained. Then how to share that? Because you know what it is? We live in a world where we connect with people more over their pain than we connect over their joys. And wouldn't it be more wonderful if we could just be happier for other people, and also when we're happy, express that maturely? And I think that the way in which we do that is just simply by being more compassionate when we've been given compassion. You know, when we're receiving joy, then try to fill other people's lives with that joy, and not by showing off all the things that we've been given, but rather serving others with that which we've been given. So say, for example, I made some money, then rather than me just spending it all on myself, let me put a little bit away for spending it with my friends, or people that are going through something that maybe need a night out or need a dinner with them. So let me just go and spend it with them. So sharing our joys, and it doesn't even need to be proclaimed. I don't need to say, hey guys, I made money, let's go out. It can just be, hey, look, I just want to catch up. I just want to be there as in a friendly way. Do you want to just catch up? And, you know, dinner's on me, just as a friend to friend. You know,
and you always get it back, don't you? What you get, and
always.
You should obviously never do it for that reason. You know, you give from the heart, but when you really truly do give from the heart, from that place, you always get it back. And it's not always in the same way. You know, if you give a fiver, you won't necessarily get a fiver back, but maybe it's, you know, like a little dog runs up to you and gives you a little lick on the face, and you really enjoy, or, you know, you get a lovely compliment or something. You'll always get that energy that you give out back.
I wonder, is it that you get it back, or is it that it puts you in a headspace to be open to other things?
Probably both,
and realize the beauty of the world, and realize, oh, that dog, not just think, oh, dog, get away, but you actually like embrace the dog and notice it. I think maybe that is it. You're just more when you are exposed to good things, you are then maybe more conscious and aware.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this or that. You know, I think sometimes with these kind of things, we think, is it this or is it that? And I think the beauty is it can be this and that. You know, it can be both, that you're noticing it more and that the universe is giving back. And both of them can, and I think sometimes we try to unpack it by saying, I need to know the reason why I'm receiving this joy. But you don't ever think like that. When you're receiving joy, you're just receiving joy. And I think, but the converse is also true. When you're receiving the bad moments, rather than thinking all the time, why is this happening to me? We can sometimes also unpack it by saying, what is this trying to teach me? So rather than it always being this reason or that reason that, you know, I'm receiving this joy, let's also think, is this reason and that reason I'm receiving it? And in the same way in our sorrows, you know, it's this and that.
This person isn't particularly spiritual, and I think it's Christopher Hitchens that said this. I quite like it, in that when the people that say, you know, why is this happening to me? The simple answer is, well, why not you? which is stark. It might not be Christopher Hitchens, but it is certainly something he would have.
I mean, that's a principle, right? It's the same way of saying, what is this trying to teach you? But like, it's a lesson for you.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, it's a similar thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And it means that you can actually focus on you and realize that there is no force, in my belief, like bigging you up. It's just for you to connect with the world. It's for you to make good, however, whatever that looks like, whether that be through helping yourself or helping others. We are powerful beings, and as maybe alluding to what Kat says, you had a choice. We do have a choice. Of course, we don't have a choice in all of our external circumstances, but we have a choice of how we then interact with them and digest them and how we move forwards.
Yeah, like I had a retreat in Vrindavan. I take a group to India every year, like 50 people, and it was my first time doing a retreat that big, and especially to a place that is externally chaotic like India. And day 3 or day 4, I lost my voice. And I mean, for what I do, it's like that I've basically lost my major tool. Like that, I use my voice for everything, for speaking, for singing, for explaining, for, you know, comforting, for, you know, whatever. And so day 3 or day 4, I can't remember, I lost it. And that night I was just really bewildered, because I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And I was so strung up on what am I going to do about it, that I in the morning when I woke up, I sat on the edge of my bed and I had to just sit there and think, what is this trying to teach me? And then the inner voice was, a part of me was saying, don't be so far-fetched, you know, like it's just you lost your voice, you overexerted it. And the other part of me was saying, no, think about it. What is it trying to teach you? And you know, interestingly enough, the night before or the day before I lost it, I spoke quite strongly about you know, Vedic philosophy, and I ended the class by saying, what's the difficulty? That was the line. I said, what's the difficulty? You know, I'm giving it so cleanly, I'm giving it so, I was quite like passionately speaking. And then I didn't notice, but actually a few people got a little hurt by that and a little offended by the way I was speaking. And it was a big lesson for me just to realize that the voice is to be used not for promotion, but for attraction. And that's been my mood ever since. And I've lost it once or twice since. And I've tried to reflect, did I say something that was in that promotion mood rather than attraction? But I think as wellness instructors, teachers, anyone that's listening, that is sharing wisdom with others, that is sharing instruction with others, sometimes we have to think to ourselves, and this is just maybe a lesson for me, but maybe it helps you as well. Am I using my voice, my mind, my body, my words in promotion, self-promotion, or promotion of my process and my tradition and my religion and my spirituality, or am I using it to attract? And I think there's a subtle difference there. Attraction versus promotion.
I love that way of thinking about it.
And that was like, for me, was like, what is this trying to teach me? And you know, the miraculous thing is, as soon as I figured that out, or rather that kind of lesson came to me, within like half a day, my voice was back. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, it usually takes like 5 days to get your voice back. So I saw that as kind of like a divine miracle. And it was like a real lesson for me going forward. So if someone is hearing this that came on my retreat, now you know the reason.
I just wondered, this came up. We were chatting to someone who runs retreats very regularly a few days ago, and what came up was, of course, on retreats, especially in somewhere like India, you know, where especially if people haven't been somewhere like that before, it can stir emotions. It can be quite overwhelming in many senses, and people can be quite vulnerable. And I just wonder, you know, maybe some people then put you on a pedestal. How do you, in a sense, how would you protect yourself in that context? So if people are coming to you and maybe being too open with you, if they can be too open, or they're relying on you too much, how would you divide that? How would you create clear lines?
What a question, Adam. Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you said about going to India, it was like, I say this to everyone that comes with me, that it's not going to be a soft landing on the way there. I mean, when you get there, it's not in the physical, like the plane, but I mean, when the door opens, you're like, holy crap, where the hell am I? But also on the way back, let me warn you, when you land back in London, it's not a soft landing, because you're like, what the hell? I'm in a place where people don't mean what they say and don't say what they mean. You know, I'm in a place where smiles don't mean smiles. I'm in a place where, yeah, anyway, so many different cultural things is one thing, but so many spiritual things also. And you're right. When people came to India, they the attendees put you on a pedestal, or rather I felt like that. And B, when people see you in India with a group of 50 Western people, automatically you become Swamiji, even if you're just a 32-year-old kid, you know, inner kid. People just automatically think that you've got something special to say, and the respect comes up. And yeah, I mean, how to deal with that, if I'm honest, I'm not quite fully realized on it, but I know there's a few things. One of the things that I do is when I feel that my pride is getting quite strong, I think of my spiritual teacher. I close my eyes and I just think of him standing behind me, and all the praise that's coming towards me, I just pass it on backwards, because anything good you hear from me is definitely a teaching of his, and anything bad you hear of me is definitely me. So yeah, that's one practice I do. Like, that's why I keep pictures of him everywhere, you know, in front of me.
Is he alive still?
Yeah. I got a picture of him in front of me, a picture of him from behind me.
Where is he based?
In Germany, in Berlin, funnily enough.
Oh, wow.
Is that where you met him?
I met, he was that guru that in my first kirtan, that he was the one singing and I was miming, and the yellow t-shirt.
And was that Berlin?
That was in Spain in 2000.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, can't remember what year.
I just assumed it was all like North London. I don't know how I happened. Can I ask you a bit of a weird question about? I was talking a lot about neck the other day, and neck strength, and how in Western culture our heads kind of hang, neck,
Okay.
And our heads kind of hang forwards, and we're quite immobile in the head. And then I reflected on that on India. There's lots of head movement, and it's all quite subtle. I saw this really.
I'm doing one to him right now on the camera.
I then watched a documentary on it, and how subconscious it is, and how, of course, you know, yes can often be the bobble. And they then said to this group of kind of Indian guys, what would you do if you were answering yes to something? And they all nodded their head. And then they said, and that meant yes, and then they all did that. It's
a subtle one, you know. If someone's saying something that you agree with, you just go like one tilt to the side, and that's also a yes.
But it was subtle and subconscious, and it's just this random wondering I had. Do you think maybe I should ask someone who is more physical in terms of, do you feel that their necks, like people have stronger necks, do people stand taller perhaps in India? Have you noticed that a little bit? Better posture?
No, I'd say the opposite. The posture is really bad.
Oh, okay. So, I just had to ask, because someone who's been in India recently. I just wanted to know about neck strength.
No, it's just like the externals are just really not a thing in India, you know, like people will stare at you and they don't mean anything by it. They'll sit super crooked and they don't think anything by it. They'll be very unhygienic right in front of your face and they don't mean anything by it. Nothing rude meant by it. It's just the thing about India is like, and it's not to say that it's better or worse. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just that they're not focused on as externals as much as we are here. Like, you know, here I'm so conscious about whether everything is prim and proper. There, I can just let go of that, and it's so freeing. Like, even if for no other reason, that's one of the reasons I'd go to India, just to be free of. No one gives a crap, you know. And you know, it's a life lesson. People don't care as much as we think that they care. Like, I think sometimes we are overly hyperly sensitive about how am I being perceived by others, and the reality is a lot of people just don't give a crap. And if
they're all worrying about what everyone else is thinking.
Exactly, they're worrying about themselves.
No one cares.
And you know, it's a secret to confidence that if you want to be more confident in any room, any situation, even with this, whether it's a celebrity, like one of the things that I've always found is just to realize that person is probably thinking, I wonder how am I going to come off in this situation? I wonder what the perception is going to be. And if you can just get into that inner mindset, you can be super, super chill in any environment. It's helped me a lot, actually. Like, I can't name names, but there's been, I've been in rooms where I am genuinely the least famous person there. But just by remembering that they're probably just as anxious as I am in some sense, like just, I wonder if, you know, if I say something and it's not politically correct, they probably have to be more hyperly sensitive about this stuff. So yeah, I love just being able to just be myself and crookedly so.
Wonderful. Do you want to do some quick fires?
Let's do some quick fires. Well, as always, we could just chat for hours and hours and hours, but have to cap it at some point. Have you got a quick fire in mind, Adam?
Go ahead.
Oh, I haven't even got one. What are you reading at the moment?
I am reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the postgraduate study of Bhakti Yoga.
And then actually, we don't need. Let's just tell us where you are. Tell us where you're going to be. Not like where you are now, but some of the tour dates and when's your next event. You're in London. I wish we could come to that. Maybe we can persuade.
Yeah.
I'd love to come to the next one. That's in, where is that? It's Union Chapel.
Yeah, so I've got the 5th of May in London. I've got a 1,000-person concert at Union Chapel. Please do come. And then homestay is Friday nights at Omnom. And if you want any information on any future events, it's radhikadas.com/events.
And your album and podcast?
Podcast comes out every Monday. It's got a host of amazing guests and people like yourselves. I've had both of you on.
What's it called?
It's called For Soul's Sake.
For Soul's Sake, lovely.
Interestingly, the reason why we called it that is because I've not yet used it. Like, I've not explained it before, so here's an exclusive for you. I was looking through names for the podcast, and I couldn't find anything. Like, I was looking for like soul this, and I don't know, spiritual that, and I just got to a point where I was like, fuck. And then I just went, for soul's sake. For soul, that's it. I looked up and it worked.
Oh, I love it.
Amazing. And where can people, is your album out on, is it to download or is it on Spotify?
It's everywhere. Yeah. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all the hotspots. Same with the podcast. It's on all major platforms. So go check it out. I've got an EP out called, what's it called?
Tuneful. That's a tuneful call.
Yeah, I can't remember. Finding My Way. Finding My Way. Yeah, and then there's a load of live albums because a lot of the feedback we were getting is, these are cool recording albums, but what about the live stuff? So then we recorded previous concerts and we put those up.
I agree with that in Kirtan. So when I listen to what seems like call and response, like pure, like, as if you were there, but it's recorded in the studio, it doesn't have the same feeling, and everyone is too good a singer. Yeah. It's a really different sensation. Although I do listen to that stuff, it's not the same as the live recordings. The live recordings, actually,
I totally agree.
You could tune in to the collective a little bit.
Yeah. So my dream is to one day win a Grammy under the chant section, which Dave String has been a massive part about. And so I know I need to record more music. And so this year I'm recording a full-on album. But the live stuff is in my heart, so if you like live Kirtan, then go check out Heartland 1 and Heartland 2. It's all up on Spotify. It's live Kirtan.
Who won the Grammy this year?
I have no idea.
I know Dave Stringer was up there.
He was nominated,
nominees,
alongside Maddie. Yeah,
we will let you get back to your children and your family now. Thank you so much for giving time to us when time is not that free at the moment for you. You guys are really doing something special by sharing wellness and doing it alongside a family. And I'm deeply appreciative of our friendship. You're always helping me so much. So thank you so much to both of you. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Honestly Unbalanced.